welcome to our Fabulous Fridays. This is a program that we had last fall, and what we did was send out some information to people asking them, what kind of topics would you be interested in if we offered Fabulous Fridays again? And we got back some really good information, and that's why we have the topics listed for this next time. Now, the voice that you're hearing, and maybe you can see me on your screen, I am Marsha Goetting, and I'm the Family Economics Specialist with Montana State University Extension. And we're the arm of the university that takes education and information out across the state so that we can make the quality of life better for the families out there. And today's topic, it's going to be one of 8. And today we're going to be looking at what to include in a letter of last instruction. And I have a great co-host with me, Kim. Kim Suta Woodring is one of our extension agents, and she happens to be based in Toole County, up there north, close to the border. Well, on the border, I would say, and that's in Shelby, Montana. And then we have Carrie. Carrie is the webinar assistant, and she's the one that was saying, Marsha, you got the wrong slide set up. Good grief, how embarrassing. But I'll get my act together, I hope, better for you next time. So Carrie is the one that does the website that you signed up for. And at the website, she has put some really great things there. We know that some of you have a lot of experience with Zoom, WebEx, and some of the other platforms. But if you're one of the ones that are going, oh, this is the first time, and you're kind of excited, keep in mind that Carrie has put up some directions there. We also provide directions on our looping slides. So if you want to check in earlier next week, you can watch those and see how you can use your smartphone or your computer to participate. And I'd like to welcome the registrants that we have for this series. We have 127 registered, so we're thrilled. And Carrie did this neat map that shows where everybody is. So we can see that we've got a little bit more in the West, and I was thinking, gee, we should have a contest. And with the contest, we can see who has the most. And right now, it's Western Montana. I'm also delighted to report that we have 11 out-of-staters. So I'm assuming maybe you have some relatives in Montana, or you're just interested in what we're doing in Montana. So regardless, welcome everybody. Now, we've had a special request from our participants in the past, and those of you that have participated in webinars over the last 2 years, like me, might find that some of them tend to get a little bit on the fall asleep. Oh, my eyelids sometimes. So they said, you've got to make your program motivating and exciting and then not put people to sleep. And that's always difficult when you're talking about estate planning, because people start right away with the thought that, oh, this is going to be boring. And some of it, I got to grant you, isn't as interesting as some of the other parts. So I've come up with some engagement tools, and Kim made some suggestions as well. So we're going to share those with you. First of all, we have a guest, a special guest with us today, and that is Tim Gill. Tim is the president of the 4-H Foundation Board of Directors here in Montana, and we're just so excited to have him. And later on in the program, he is going to be sharing his 4-H story. We also like to use polls, or I like to think of those as questions. So this is a practice poll for you to participate in. What I'd like for you to do is give us a clue about which of our marketing techniques seems to be the best. So you've got a choice. Maybe you read about it in the paper. We've got Ollie, O-L-L-I, which is here on campus, and they helped us advertise. We have our extensions agents out there that may have done some work with you. And we've got past participants' email. So a special hi to all of you that were on Fabulous Fridays last fall. We've had some social media, Missoula Aging Services, Helena Community Connections. So if any of those names are familiar to you, please check, and you can check more than one, okay? We just want to know, how did you learn about it? And don't forget to go down to the bottom of that question panel and hit submit so that your answers can be recorded. So I'll take a minute to wet my whistle here and we'll see what the results are. All right, let's see. What do we have here? Carrie, do we have any results? Yeah, she's given those to me. And so I'm quickly just sliding over here. And we see that 22% of you received a past participant email. And that's great because we did send that out to everybody that done Montguide Mondays, Tuesday tips, Wisdom Wednesdays, Thoughtful Thursdays. Yes, we had a lot of webinars that we were offering to people. So it looks like those are working. We do have extension and the newspaper articles. So thank you, Communication Services at MSU, and for the local newspapers that printed an article for us. All right, so thank you all for participating in that. And we don't want to forget the chat panel. Those of you that have access to that, feel free, take advantage. As we go along and you have questions or you want to make a comment, go ahead, use that marvelous chat room. And then what we are going to do is Kim and I are going to remain online after we visit with our special guest, and any specific questions that you have, we'll be glad to answer those. Now, those of you that have participated in the past know that I've turned into an absolute wildflower nut. I like to spend the summer taking photographs of wildflowers, and I found that I've been able to work them into my presentations. I felt like they were getting boring, and so we were on our way to Kansas to visit my folks, and I was complaining to my husband, and I was doing wildflowers, putting them in note cards at the same time. And all of a sudden, I started thinking of some of the names, and I thought those names can serve as reminders. Maybe a clever name will help people remember a specific topic. Then I decided, hey, let's do some estate planning trivia. So throughout the program, I'm going to ask a trivia question, like the meaning of a word. And the first person that gets it right in the chat room will receive a note card from me. So get your fingers ready to go. And here's the first trivia question. What is the definition of devazy? I'm not making that word up, no. What is the definition of devazy? So write that in the chat room, and because there's a timer thingy on there, we'll be able to tell who got that answer correctly, and I will send you a note card. Now this is a steer's head. Yeah, isn't that a beautiful flower? And it looks like one. And at my public meetings, I always like to let people guess what it is because it's kind of fun. They come up with all kinds of names, and usually there's a botanist in the crowd that gives the scientific name, but I'm into common names. And the common name is steerhead, which is perfect because I want to steer you. Kim and I want to steer you to information to include in a letter of last instruction. And voila, MSU Extension does have a Mont Guide. Now, Mont Guide is a fancy term for a fact sheet. And we have a list in this letter of last instructions. So actually today, you could just sit back and watch and listen and think how this applies to you because you know that there's a list out there. And we also have a fill in the blank one. You know, when they started having fill in the blank type things on the computer, how much time that saves. Well, one of our extension agents at the time in Pend Oreille County says, Marsha, I'd be glad to do this. And then Carrie revised, and we've got a thing that you can, we have a form that you can fill out online. So I want to give a shout out to Adele Stinson, who is now one of our family and consumer science teachers in Webo, Montana. And those of you that don't know about Webo, it's clear east, close to North Dakota. Now, why do we want to talk about a letter of last instruction? Because I'm sure you're thinking, Marsha, there's a lot more important things than this. And I would say that's probably depends on whether or not you've been there. If you've had somebody pass away in your life and you're the one that had to be the personal representative, step into their shoes and start doing things. And so what this letter can do is provide information to your people out there of where the important papers are and all those kinds of things. And that's tough to do. You've got grandma, maybe she's 85, she's grieving over the loss of her husband, and then all these questions are coming out at her, and she doesn't know where things are. So I guess I kind of look at it as an adult responsibility to have one of these to make things easier for your heirs. So I'm just real curious. Do you have a letter of last instruction? That's an easy one. Yes or no? Okay, Carrie, that I don't think we need to leave a lot of time for that one, do we? Can you tell? Are we getting a lot of responses?
No, Marsha, half of them have done it.
Okay.
Don't forget to hit the submit button too.
Oh, yeah. Thank
If
you,
you
Kim.
answer, make sure you hit the submit button.
I was real embarrassed the first time I was participating in one of these because I was the very one that forgot to hit the submit button. And, and I'll tell you, I think this will help you perhaps pay more attention, be more engaged, because we find that about half of our participants don't. And we've been trying to figure out why people don't respond to the polls or why they don't use the chat room. And one theory that was presented was people are on cell phones and they're like a Marsha Goetting with a cell phone. They don't know how to use some of this stuff. Okay, let's see what we've got here. If I know how to. Okay, so we have 23% of you that have done one. Good for you guys. Pat on the shoulder there. We have 63% that say no. So of course you're here because you really want to know what you should include. And maybe some of you that are the 23% are thinking, did I miss anything? And maybe we did, but we'll share. So yay. Now, this is a sky pilot. This is a flower that you would find in the Beartooth Mountains. And it's really a neat looking one. And you see how hairy it is. Well, it's a sky pilot. And so that makes me think of Kim. I want Kim to be our pilot and share with us some of the contents of a letter of last instruction. Over to you, Kim.
Hello. Well, keep your hands and feet inside the pilot or inside the airplane and we'll take off. So I wanted to talk to you about making sure that you know the location of your important papers. Be specific about that location, whether it's a safety deposit box in a bank or at your home, in your computer room, or even on your computer. Personally, we have a box in our home where we keep everything, and it's very well labeled, very well organized. So if we cannot be there to find a file, we could call somebody and they could go through it and find that specific file. So that's really handy.
Yeah, in my family, it was in a shoebox at the top of the closet, and we knew that's where the important papers were, but there were other places they were located. So after mom and dad were both gone, it was a challenge to find those things.
Oh gosh, I bet. So some of your important papers that you want in your box are your birth certificates, your baptism papers, your marriage papers, possibly your dissolution of marriage papers, your passport, some of your papers for if you have adopted children, your social security cards, your military service records, and your will. So Marsha, what other items should be in the letter of last instruction?
Well, we all have vehicles, and some people have vessels. And vessels are kind of defined in law as boats and those types of things. And we have registration titles for those. We may have an insurance policy. And I've got, a file, one of those 4-drawer things. And I have the stuff in there. But my husband is not impressed with my filing system, but I know how to find it. And so it's the same thing. He knows where his stuff is, and I know where my stuff is. But that reminds me, there's a new law that we have in Montana about using this beneficiary designation for a vehicle or vessel. This was passed by the last legislative session, and the form is MV13. And I'm going to ask another trivia question. On what date do you think the new Montana beneficiary designation for a vehicle or vessel law? That is a long one. When did it come into effect? So you enter that in the chat room, and you might get one of my note cards. Okay. So how do you do this? Well, you can designate on the form when you're applying for a title when you have a new car. And I was one of the first. I was so excited. There I am at the dealer's shop, and I'm saying, I want to fill out a beneficiary designation form. And they informed me, Montana does not have that. And I said, oh, yes, you do. And so I shared the information with them, and we did it. Well, you're going to have to follow through, because what I discovered when I got my certificate or my title 3 months later, my beneficiary designation is not on there. So we're having a visit about that so that we can make sure it does happen. But you can add a new beneficiary once you've got a current one on. Maybe you want to add one, but you can only have 2. That's all they're going to allow you is 2 beneficiaries on your vehicle. You can also change once you get one. You can add one with this new MV13 form, and you can also revoke current beneficiaries on file. So the neat thing about the MV13 form is that's another one that you need to have in your letter of last instructions. Where did you put it? Now, what else do we need to think about? Well, some of you out there are leaseors, and we have lessees. So what about these leases? We need the information about those. Some people have post office boxes with a combination or a key if they're located in town. So that's something that would need to be with your letter of last instruction. So I guess the tip from our Sky Pilot and Kim would, let's just get started. You don't have to do it all in one day. Let's just get started with some of the items. And again, don't forget, MSU Extension has that list for you. Now, this happens to be a green gentian, and it's only one flower. One of these is way tall. I've seen one as tall as I am.
Marsha, we did have a question.
Okay.
What other states have the MV 13? Because she's not from Montana. Is that just a Montana form?
No, Montana tends to be the last to adopt something, but there are other states, but I can't tell you which ones do. It's similar to a transfer on death deed. I know that there are 35 states out there that let you transfer your real property on death without probate. Well, the MV13 in Montana also does that. Your vehicle goes to the individual without probate, which I think I forgot to mention. So I would encourage you, if you're located in another state, is to say beneficiary designation for a vehicle / vessel, and then put your state in there. And if there is one, I dare say it's going to come up for that. Okay.
There's one other question, Marsha. Can we do an MV13 form for cars we own now, not just the title for a new car?
Yes, you can, but you're going to have to pay the appropriate fees. So there's a $10 fee that's a transfer, and then there's another one. And basically what you are is you're getting a new title and the beneficiary, And what I found, that's why I'm waiting to see what mine's going to say, because the idea was the title would indicate there is a beneficiary designation, but the designation is on file with the motor vehicle department. So it's not, actually printed on the title. That's what I've been told. So I'm working on a mock guide. I think I forgot to mention that. A mock guide, is the fact sheet. And I just want to give people clues of how to do this. And I'm working with the head of the motor vehicle department. And I hope we're going to have that out in the next couple of months. So stay tuned. And while I'm at it, free advertisement here. If any of you would like to serve as a personal reviewer, in other words, I like to have people review the work that I do before I go out with it to the general public. If you would like to be a reviewer of that, I can send you a double-spaced, it's not pretty, but it has a subject matter there. You put your name and your email address in the chat box, and I will make sure that that is sent to you. So,
One more question, Marsha, sorry. Can you add a beneficiary to a vehicle already registered?
yes, because that would be very similar to the title. You've already got a title, but again, you will need to pay the fees that the motor vehicle department has. So you can download the MV13 form. It's at our website, but you can also just hunt for it if you put Montana Motor Vehicle Department, and then there's a thing up there that says forms, and then you scroll down to the MV13. Okay.
And someone also mentioned that MV13 form is not fillable. They have to print it out and handwrite
it out that way. Yes, I'm sorry, I don't remember that, but and some people would rather do that. But I'll check with Carrie. Would you write that down for me?
Yep.
Check with Joanne, my co-author, and see if they're going to do a fillable form. All right. So, Kim, what are some additional things the Gentian? Let's see. Yeah, the Gentian family. What did they include in their letter of last instruction?
Some of the items that they need to include are a list of username and passwords for the computer. When I help my grandpa with his computer and his phone problems, I make sure that he has a little notebook filled with each username and password, and then at the top I write what it's for. So if grandpa ever passes, we will have all of his information right there in his little notebook. And you could just keep that by the computer and it would be very easy for your family to access, but make sure that they know where that is.
Boy, do you sound like a good granddaughter. It's really sweet to help grandpa, and somebody out there might think of doing something similar, because for that older generation, these computers are a little scary.
They can be.
I'm a baby boomer, and they're still scary sometimes.
I was just thinking about writing them down for my grandpa, and I don't even have my own written down for me. So maybe I need to start doing that as well.
You have to practice what you preach.
Yes, that's right.
Me too.
So some other things you want to make sure are in there, the location of your credit card and your credit card numbers, the payment terms and the contracts for those. Make sure you know the location of your deeds, your transfer on death deed, your title insurance, your mortgage papers, an inventory of your household contents. And another one that people don't really think of are photos. Make sure that they're copied to a CD or a memory stick or up in the cloud if you know how to do that. These can also be used for insurance purposes. If you have a picture of something that was in your house, you can use that. And you also want to have a list of your policies in your list of life insurance, health insurance, auto insurance, homeowners and renters insurance or renters insurance, long-term care and disability. And some of your insurance docs could be your credit life, your funeral insurance, and your burial insurance.
Yeah,
As
and that's something important to let the families know, because in my situation, I had no idea that mom had already paid for her funeral, uh, and she was dealing with someone that was living out of town. She liked um, a mortuary that was about 30 miles from our hometown rather than using a local one. And that's just not something I would have known, but my sister knew it. And so she was on the lookout for the papers for that.
yeah, it's good that she knew. You probably wouldn't want to pay for that twice.
Mhm.
Or have a headstone made twice. That wouldn't be.
Oh, yeah.
Some of your tax documents, you want to make sure that you know where they are, and you want to save the last 3 years of tax documents. You'll want to know where your income tax returns are, make sure that they're in there, and your supporting documents for your taxes. So your tips from the green gentian include location of all of your items in your letter of last instruction. Marsha, how do we handle money and investments in a letter of last instruction?
Well, everybody has a little bit of these, and what I'm going to do is use the golden prickly pear. That kind of makes me think of money or gold. And we know we have all these financial accounts. We have checking, we have savings, certificates of deposit. And, some people, you automatically know, well, it's in the community. Well, we had a gentleman pass away in Montana, and they could not get his probate settled for the first year because they had to wait till all the 1099 forms came, the next January and February, and they discovered he had accounts, 49 of them, scattered across the state of Montana. So that got a little expensive for that probate, for the attorney to check it out and do all those things. And some of you also have a Montana medical care savings account. Okay, that means that you are setting aside a certain amount of money every month, or the year, saving on taxes, but also that can be a legacy for your spouse, your children, and your grandchildren. So here's my estate planning trivia question. What is the maximum amount a Montana can put in the medical care savings account in 2022? That's this year. What is the maximum that Montana will allow for you to put in that account? Okay, enter that in the chat room. And again, the first person that gets it right will get a note card. What else do we have out there? We've got IRAs. Those were established back in 1976, and we have individuals out there that still have those accounts. Well, let's look at those and your other retirement accounts. Where are they? We've got 403Bs, we've got 457s, we've got 401Ks, and there may be some information in there about survivor benefits for the surviving spouse, etc. If you have a safe deposit box, let's take a look at whose name is on that box. Let's have a list of the contents and make sure you know where the keys are. Now I got to tell a little story here. We got 2 keys when we got the safe deposit box. I put mine in the file marked safe deposit key. And I said, why don't we keep them in here? And my hubby says, no, give me my key. I will put it where I can find it. Right. He needed to get into the safe deposit box when I was out of town, which of course was pre-COVID. And guess what? He hasn't found the key yet. So he has got to pay for the extra situation there, but better now than later. And guess where both keys are now? Both of them are where Marsha knows where they are. Don't I sound a little snippy there? Okay, who else is authorized to sign on your safe deposit box? Because you see, even though you think they're authorized to sign, it could be that box is in joint tenancy. And if we have some silver dollars in there, we have some jewelry in there, technically that surviving joint tenant could say those are mine. So we don't want to have that problem. And those of you that have savings bonds in your safe deposit box and you've totally forgot about them, kind of like I did for a while, I just didn't pay any attention to them. And all of a sudden, I realized they've come due and I haven't turned them in. And there is no interest any longer when these bonds have matured. It used to be they would mature and then they would go on, no longer. So that would be something to share over Thanksgiving or on Valentine's Day with someone that maybe purchase some savings bonds and just see if they were E, and it's been 30 years since they did it. We also have stocks, bonds, mutual funds, other securities. So let your family members know with your letter of last instruction, let's have the list or let's have the location of where those are. Then we have beneficiary designations. And I know that can be a challenge since we have the ability to do more than we used to. You can do a POD on your checking account. You can do a TOD on your stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. That's called transfer on death registration. And we've got a TOD, a TODD, that is a transfer on death deed that we can use to transfer our real property. So we want to have a copy of that so that our heirs know what's going on there. And now we have the vehicle and vessel one. So what works for you? I finally just went nuts and decided what I've got to do is have a separate file for my beneficiary designations. Because when I would put it in the thick pile of a folder, it would get lost. And there's just times when I wanted to go in and say, okay, well now, was it this nonprofit or that nonprofit that I was leaving that to, and just update some of that information. And that's something too. You have the opportunity when you do the PODs and the TODs and the TODs to have a primary beneficiary. Okay, that's first on the list. A secondary, okay, second person, tertiary, which is third, and we could go to fourthiary, yeah, but you could decide, gee, if all of these people that I've named are deceased, I want it to go to your favorite nonprofit. And that would be, perhaps for some of us, the Montana 4-H Foundation. How about debts? If you are one of those that people owe you money, you want to make sure, because see, when you die, that's still an asset. And those individuals still owe the money to you through your estate, so to speak. So the name, the address, telephone number, what kind of payment terms are there, if there's collateral, provide that information. And then if you have trusts, there's individuals out there that have revocable living trusts. And there are some that have, or they're going to have, testamentary trusts. That means that's one they're going to establish when they're deceased, but they may have opened up an account, so all that stuff goes in there, So take a look at those trusts and find out the trust document you want to know, and that trust document will tell you who the beneficiary is, who is the name of the trustee. That trustee needs to have access to the trust so that they make sure that they're doing what the trust document tells them to do so. And then if that trustee is already deceased, we need to know the name of the successor trustee. How about survivors benefits? We've got organizations, unions, lodges, and veterans that provide some death benefits. When my dad passed away, what they had was a marker. And you could put the marker up there to designate that he was a World War II veteran. And we wanted to take advantage of that in honor of my dad. You may have some subscriptions to lots of magazines and newspapers. And if there's a survivor, that survivor may still want those. On the other hand, maybe I wouldn't need a Motorcycle Mama or something like that if it was out there. So my tip from the Golden Prickly Pear is we're going to get all this information together, but maybe if we're looking at our money and investments, we could assess some of those while we're doing it and make sure that we know, okay, this is how this one's doing, and that we're keeping track of those. Now this happens to be a heart-leafed arnica. So Kim, Valentine's Day is coming up. Have a heart tell us about other items that should be included in the letter of last instruction.
All right, Marsha. So these will be all items related to something that's near and dear to your heart in honor of the heart leaf arnica. So you're going to want to know the location of your will, the signed original will, whether it's with you in your lockbox or at your lawyer's office, and make sure you have a copy of separate listing of tangible personal property. Now, what does that mean? I didn't even know. Marsha had to tell me. This is something near and dear to you, something like a family heirloom or your pets, and some of your personal effects, such as, again, your photographs and your other family heirlooms. And this reminds me of the Mott guide that Marsha wrote called Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate. This is basically how to decide who gets what after grandma passes or any other relative. Your Montana law requires that you have this paragraph in your will or trust. I have a separate listing of tangible personal property. Do you want to?
And it's really, really important. Sorry for the interruption, Kim.
No,
I find more fights in families sometimes over the personal items. It's knockdown, drag out time in some families. It's like the rules were there, and when mom and dad are alive, everybody's fine. And mom and dad are gone, and oh my goodness, the stories that I could tell, and you could probably tell as well, about grandma's rocking chair, and everybody wanted it, and they get in a fist fight practically over it. So how does the list work there, Kim?
Yeah, you'll want to have a separate listing, and it should look something like this. It says, my grandma Ray's opal ring, and who it goes to, her niece, Bethany. This is a good example of being very specific in case there's another Bethany, I don't know how to pronounce it, Buzinski out there.
Yes, yes. My dad made lots of fun with my brother-in-law about that one, but it's Buzinski.
Sure. So if there was another one out there, they wouldn't be confused by some other random Bethany. They would know that it goes specifically to their niece. And then there's an example at the bottom where you could date it and sign it, and then everybody knows who gets what.
And it's really great. And I found, Kim, I got a little emotional when I was doing this myself. I thought, oh, I've done this for years. And as I started writing down the things, and I guess thinking about dying, I had tears come to my eyes. And I thought, well, Marsha, this shouldn't be so, but it was, because I do have things. You know, this ring of my grandma's was her engagement ring. And it was, and I didn't know this till afterwards, it was 1919 that grandma and grandpa got married, and here I have this ring, so it's special. And so I think there's more people, you know, you men, you have guns, you have tools, all of us have, I think, something. Okay, how about your pets though?
Well, my pets are like that for me. I don't have any children, so when I was going over this PowerPoint, I made the joke of leaving all of our money to our dog. But you set up a trust so that your dog is taken care of after your death. So this is where you would put that estate planning for tools for owners of pets and companion or service animals. So another tip from your heart leaf arnica, have a heart. Be sure your will mentions a separate listing of tangible personal property, including your pets. We have the Explorer's Gentian, which reminds us of the death notification. So who do you want to know after you have passed on, who do you want to know that you have died? You're going to want to let your family members know, possibly your friends and neighbors, your personal representative. And your personal representative is your person in charge of your estate, usually decided by you. You might want to notify your professional and business relationships, including your employer or employees. You might also want to let your accountant know, your attorney, your investment advisor, and your insurance agent know. And also your final institutions, because that may be where your accounts are located. Financial institutions, such as your bank, where your accounts are located. Add to who you might want to list other people, and you can sure do that there. But add to your letter of last instruction whom you want to be notified of your death. Oh, sorry, this was me. And this reminds me of the pink monkey flowers. So Marsha, don't monkey around, share more with us.
Okay. Yeah, as you can tell, sometimes my flowers are a little bit of a stretch, but it's still fun because these flowers, it is. We don't want to monkey around. We want to make sure that we specify some of our preferences. You know, I have people out there that want to donate their organs. They may want to donate their body. And there's rules that go along with that. And some of those I didn't know till we did a Mont guide on the Montana donation program. And there's strict rules. If you give your body, then you can't give your organs, and on and on. And so if you're one of those individuals, take advantage of those Mont guides that we've got with that. And even embalming, you can't be embalmed and do these other things as well. So any of those funeral, memorial, what kind of things do you want to have done? And certainly we've seen a lot of change in that over the past 2 years, of services that simply couldn't be held, services that were held 6 months later, and different things going on because of COVID. There are folks out there that have very strong feelings about whether or not they're going to be cremated or whether or not they're going to be buried. And we even have a mock guide on cremation, and it tells you what the rules are as far as the state goes, and then also about when you want to scatter the ashes, what things are legal and technically not legal with that. And then even public viewing. Some people don't like that kind of thing. I find that some of the traditions in Montana are different than what we had in Kansas, where I grew up. But now I've been in Montana for 40 plus years, and so I've kind of taken on some Montana decisions. But we do have one out there about what are your rights over your remains. Because I've had stories shared with me that mom would say, this is what I want to have happen. And she tells the kids during Thanksgiving, and she wanted to be cremated. Well, she didn't put that in writing. So mom died, and we've got the 4 kids. Daughter wants to honor mom. The 3 boys, no, they just can't do that. And even my dad, when I said, Dad, I want to be cremated. And he was very much opposed to that. And finally, we talked about it a bit. And what I discovered is that in World War II, there were a lot of planes that crashed in the Philippines, and he smelled the bodies. And for him, that was awful. And he just could not imagine somebody wanting to be cremated. Okay, so we've got those 2 Mont guides. So I think that you need to be specific with your family members. And when you look at that, what happens to my remains thing, you'll see that Montana gives you 4 ways that you can make your preferences clear. And that is what is honored. Even if all your kids don't want to do it, if the mortuary, the funeral parlor director, whatever, has a copy of that, that's what will be done. And you can imagine the funeral directors, they're between a rock and a hard place, because you got 2 kids that say this, you got 2 kids that say that. What are you supposed to do? So now we've got this law that puts it in writing, but you can also do a video of that. Now here we have a death canvas. Okay, what is needed for the Montana death certificate? Well, we've got the full name, the address, the marital status, and the spouse's name. There has to be a date of birth and the birthplace, and the mother's full maiden name. Okay, so that's information that we need to know so we can fill it out correctly. So we've got the military, we've got social security number, we've got education, and we take a look, we may need as many as 6 to 12. And normally, at least in Kansas, I found they would ask you how many the director would. And maybe you don't even know at that point, but get plenty because later you may need them. But if you do, Montana Vital Statistics Department does have copies that they would send you. So my tip from the Mountain Death Canvas is make sure that your family members have the information necessary for death certificates. Now here I have a plant that is another one I'm calling a heart plant. I don't know what the name was. I haven't been able to find it, but you can see why I would call it a heart plant. And I think we need to have a heart and initiate with our spouse or even ourselves if we're single, why this letter of last instruction is important. Because we need to help those people that are grieving over us know what things that need to be done. And you need to decide yourself who you want to make copies of the letter to, family, friends, what have you. Do you want a copy with your attorney, your financial advisor, or your personal representative? And then we need to review it. You know, it'd be nice to get it done and say, oh, we don't have to look at that for the next 100 years. No, there's probably changes that will occur. Your preferences may change. Individuals in our life sometimes go and come. And so you need to make that clear when you have that change. We may even have a birth of a child or the death of a family member. So it might require that update. So have a heart, plan ahead, and get that letter of last instruction started. Well, my observation from the Lady Slipper is that time has slipped away. We hope Kim and I have shared with you and steered you towards a letter of last instruction. And let's see, those of you, Carrie, do we have some winners about the Montana Medical Care Savings Account?
Yes, Marsha, there were 2 people that got it right.
Okay, that's great. And how about the date for the beneficiary designation? What date it went into effect for the vehicle and vessel? Did anyone have that one right?
One person said October 2021. Is that correct enough?
Yes,
Okay.
we'll count that one. So if you don't have a memory like this elephant's head, we want to emphasize those 50 different Mont guides in the estate planning area that are available in one location. So this is one that Carrie has put together. All my 50 Mont guides are there. So I've gotten where when people ask for one, I don't send them just that link, but I send them this link in case there's others that when they go through, they might like to have. And don't forget, these are also available at your county extension office. You know, you can go there in Shelby and say, hey, Kim, I'd like to have that Mont guide on cremation or whatever it happens to be. Now, next week, this is another topic that was voted popular. My loved one just passed away. Now what? So we're going to be taking a look at that. And just a reminder, we're going to stay online if there's other questions that you might have. But I would like to get to our special guest, Tim. Tim is the president of the 4-H Foundation here in Montana. And I'm going to let him introduce him. There he is. You should be able to see him now. And Tim is a past member of 4-H in Fergus County. So Tim, I'd like for you to just share with us your 4-H story.
I think I got unmuted here. Thank you, Marsha. I appreciate the opportunity to share some 4-H story here, but I really enjoyed your presentation this morning. And I know I'm not done with a lot of my activity there, and the last instruction letters, mine's very piecemeal, and so I took a lot of notes during this, and I thought I got to get back after that before the winter's over when I'm doing those kind of things, and get so it was a very timely and good program. Thank you, ladies.
Oh, you're welcome.
So your first question was my experiences, is that right? So
yeah, your 4-H story. Fergus County, what?
Yeah.
That's where you grew up, I assume.
Yeah, the heart of Montana. You know, so there's some discrepancy where it exactly is, but it's right in Fergus County. We know that. I grew up in, well, actually, first few years in Judith Basin, but then into Fergus County when I was 4-H age, and was a 4-H member approximately 10 years, and I loved it. Now, there's always exceptions, and you hear it immediately, even from current. And you know, this was many years ago when I was in there, but the record books can be challenging, but they were one of the most beneficial things as I got older and was in college and then on in my business life. So many things I learned about doing a record book become part of your everyday life, whether it's financials on your project cost or writing it up or things. So it was such a, I don't think you realize for several years after you get out of 4-H just how significant it was to my upbringing and to there's everything from the social aspects of it, lots of fun in our county in particular. I think we had 4-H camps and stuff like that, but it was also a lot of education, a lot of learning, public speaking, doing demonstrations, and then, but they always seemed to make it a social enough that you didn't not that you wanted to participate and get engaged. So.
Yeah, well, that many years. How many years did you say you had?
I think 10, but I don't want somebody to look that up and say, no, it was 9 or it was 11 or
Yeah,
something.
but it was a lot. When you were in 4-H, did you have some specific projects that you just dearly loved? We know you didn't like record books, and I didn't either. Oh my, those were, county fair time, and you're trying to do all of those. So, how about favorite projects?
Well, and that one is a hard one to pin down because we had a lot of projects, nothing like the scope today available, but the horse project was a big one to us. In fact, in Fergus County, we had a separate club that was countywide for the 4-H group. You also had your local club you participated in if you were in that. And then I became a junior leader, and all of those wrapped around different activities. But the horse club was very big in ours, and we performed at county fairs and things. We became a real active type of a club. We were, and so there was a lot of social and at the fairs, I was always either showing a horse or helping others show them. But the livestock was a big part of mine. But there was a lot of other. I learned a lot from the plant sciences and from just so many. Public speaking was probably one of the most significant that really I felt helped prepare me for life, and it made me pretty nervous when I first did the first few, but then I got relaxed with it, so I knew it was good for me.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you have a favorite memory about your 4-H experience?
Well, a favorite one there again, there was just so much to it over the times. It was hard to pick one. 4-H camp in Fergus County was a big deal, and I always enjoyed that. And it wasn't just, I mean, you had dancing at night and the socials, but it was a lot of educational. And then as I became a junior leader, that was the third club I was a part of, was the junior leadership one. I would teach archery and different projects at 4-H camp, and I got to know a lot of the younger 4-H members coming in, and it really broadened my. So even though that was a social thing, they had it structured very intentionally to teach us too, and so I guess that's not a very direct answer to your question, but it kind of 4-H encompass so much. It's hard to pick out specific things.
Yeah. Well, as I think of you're describing your experience, we were probably of the era that were traditional in a sense about 4-H. And 4-H has really changed. What changes have you seen with the program, with the 200 projects now that they offer? My goodness.
Plus, but that was a real eye opener for me, Marsha. When in my business world, I thought I was so busy and stuff that I kind of got away from the local 4-H and involvement once my boys were out of it. And I lost track of just how much 4-H was doing and how many lives it affected. And in some cases, I actually was a little skeptical of how they were getting away from what we considered our traditional projects. And as I got more engaged again, and particularly when I was approached to be on the board and I started looking into it more, I was really impressed and still am just amazingly impressed how we're making 4-H weave through more people's lives. And young people don't have to be in a traditional type environment where they can have livestock or they can do a woodworking project. There's in that 200, there's so many, there's robotics and there's the STEM projects And photography is a big one, which there was some of that in the past, but just so many things that you can be living in an apartment and you can be involved in 4-H and very fun. And we have a young man on our board now that has a good story about that. I think you have him in a later session about how 4-H was so non-traditional for what he was interested in until he started looking into the projects and thought, well, heck, there's things here I really could dig into. So it's really been a wonderful experience for me to learn how much we've expanded and grown with society, and yet the tradition of what you do in 4-H and how you carry yourself and how you behave and things like that are I don't think changing, and I think they're excellent. But the opportunity to learn or to participate has expanded immensely, 10, 20-fold or something probably from my era. But,
Yeah, and not only the projects, but it's the experiences. You know, when people try to ask about 4-H, and it's you're supposed to give the elevator speech about how great 4-H is. And the youth, I have been so impressed when I've gone to 4-H Congress, and you find out there's this group that's called the ambassadors. And the ambassadors are the one that put the whole program together. They come early, they do all these things. And right, it's that ability to speak, to organize, and there's just all of those things that are involved with the 4-H program that you kind of absorb, but you don't necessarily realize it at the time. That seems like we can do the look back and go, I am able to do this because of 4-H. What made you really be interested in taking the time to be president? Because I'm sure they would ask, and you had to look at your life and say, golly, do I have time to do this? And what'd you think?
well, when I first got on the board, I was the treasurer. And I knew that I was being asked beyond because of my business history and my work experience. And that was a good thing. And I like numbers, or I like keeping finances in line and things. But I think the real eye opener for me, well, and you can't say no to 4-H, so I couldn't say no, I wouldn't be on the board. But as the offices opened up and I became president much sooner than I thought, just changes in the board and stuff. But on the other hand, I think I have such a respect for a business being run in a business way. And so it's a whole different step to me from being a 4-H leader or engaged in programs to being in the business side, where the foundation is, we're trying to generate funds to keep our programs going to support the 4-H Center and scholarships for individual 4-H members. And if you're doing that and you have we have a significant investments of endowments and managed funds we do for the counties and different people, that we've got to run it like a business. And I'm all about that. So I really felt that was a strong part of what I could offer is keeping the business side of it alive so that the foundation survives to serve future people, and then the volunteers is something that just slays me. We have over 4,000 volunteers in 4-H, and that's the commitment all over the state of Montana. Every county and every reservation we're represented, and there's people out there making that happen that are volunteers and keeping us going. And so I guess I just get I'm just so overwhelmed by how big it still is, how many hands it's touching. When I talk to employers all the time to say, one of the first things we're impressed by on a new young applicant, if they've been in 4-H, we want to talk to them because we think they've got some basic skill sets, whatever their projects were, they've got skill sets that make them a head start in our applicant process. And I know there's some other great youth programs, but this one starts young and has so many opportunity to be diverse in the projects or the people you meet and stuff that there's no reason it can't lead right into, and quite often does, some of the less youth organizations as you go on in your, whether high school or college or life. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of prattling on there, aren't I?
Well, that's good. That's the sincere interest that you have in it. And Kim, what is the age? Clover buds. When can you be a clover bud? Age.
I believe clover buds start at 5 to 8, And then once they turn 8, they can be a regular member.
Yeah, and so that's it. Even starting them out that young, and I remember going just as an ordinary person to the 4-H dinner that they had, and they had this itty bitty girl. She was a clover butt, and I didn't know that it was that young. And there she is describing her project, and she was just great, and I loved it. And I thought, yes, this is what 4-H is all about, starting that young and learning that young. Now, maybe she's a little bit extroverted, but we all learn through others that we associate with as well. So, Tim, when we think about being the foundation board of directors, and you're saying that your experience really helped with that, what kinds do you see some specific needs? You know, like I'm familiar with the People Partners program that Jerry Finn, who used to be on staff long time ago, and she did an endowment that allows 4-H kids to get grants to improve the community. And so they apply, they go through a process, and maybe they're going to put a bench at the county fair, or maybe they're going to buy a microwave for the food service. Can you think of anything that has come up in your visits with people that would be, say, a need for 4-H that people could really get on the bandwagon and say, boy, I want to start something like that?
Well, I think it's so diverse. We have so many projects and so many different forms of it that there's something that, because usually when we go to a donor or where a donor comes to us and is talking about it, they have interest in their mind, whether they're really expressing them. And so we try and accommodate that. And even if, we got a significant donation the last year that they left wide open, and they said, we want it to be where it will do the most good. And a board of directors is who helps do that. But the funding is always, and we're very cautious too about community going door to door. We don't do that because these communities that are supporting it and all their volunteers are already being, there's many other community things that they're helping. So a lot of times it's entrepreneurs or just people like myself that are getting to a point in life. Maybe we're saying we have a little more ability, but a lot of times it's businesses, and businesses do quite often have a particular area, and we honor that. It doesn't have to be in an endowment. If their interest is in sincerely a certain type of scholarship or helping with one of our outdoor projects or something, they can just make a donation direct to that benefit, and we try and honor those things. So it takes funding. Even with all these volunteers, there's so much contact information, and trying to keep the word out, and supporting, and scholarships for them to go up the ladder in education for 4-H Congress, things like that, or national levels. It's just continual, and so our work is never done because it's just continual.
Yeah. Well, that's great, Tim. We want to express appreciation to you today for being our guest on Fabulous Fridays. We look forward to hearing from other people about their 4-H experience, and we'll also hear from Todd, and he is the director of the 4-H Center, and he's going to be following up last in our program this year. So
Okay.
again, thank you very much, Tim. We'll let you get back to what you're doing today. Any last words you'd like to share?
No, just thank you very much for having me and engaging 4-H into your programs. I think you're doing a phenomenal service, getting the word out, whether we get more donations from it, but just more people that know about the programs and that it's out there, the better off we are.
Yeah, and we like to wear I Love Montana 4-H pins. I knew I'd find a use for that one. Okay, well, thanks again, Tim. And now we're going to switch over and see if we've got questions from our participants that I have answers for, or Kim does. And if we don't, we'll check into it and be able to get back to you. So, Kim, have you seen any questions that look like we need an answer to?
Marsha, I see a couple that we haven't answered.
Okay, great.
Regarding the transfer on death deed, the last Montana lawyer had an article showing the TOD will have problems in Montana using the current laws with the recommended statute changes. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. That was something that was not anticipated when the law was passed. And the background is that when we have a probate, there's a certain amount of time that creditors have to send their bills to the estate and have those paid. Okay, with the transfer on death for the real property, there is no probate. So there is no quotes ending time except for a year. So if you do a Todd, you need to be aware, and I've got it in the Mont Guide, that title companies will not issue insurance for a year because that's the amount of time that creditors have to be able to contact the estate and pay them off. So the problem is we've avoided probate, but your heir can't sell it in the sense that the title company will not give insurance on it. So that was totally unanticipated. So my sense is that we will have during the next legislative session some type of bill presented to take care of that particular situation. There may be something that people haven't thought of, like saying, okay, let's just go ahead, and even though probate isn't necessary, put an announcement in the newspaper that says creditors have 4 months to get over here and take care of this. And if they don't receive any bills, they could show that somehow to the title companies. So yeah, it's a disadvantage. It wasn't anticipated that the title companies would take that approach, but you can't blame them because they're wanting to make sure that creditors have been paid, because that property is really subject, and the PODs and the others are the same way, to bills that the decedent may have had, and they need to be paid. Okay.
Thanks, Marsha. One more question and then that's it. So as right now, the only way to get a TOD beneficiary on an existing title would be to pay for a fee. Is that right?
That I don't know. I don't know what the fee would allow, because it's the title company saying, we're just not going to issue the insurance until a year has passed, because we know once the year passes, then it's too late for any creditors to go ahead and try to get their money. You know, it makes it void at that time. So think about what you've got and will that make a difference? You know, if you're going to TOD something to somebody that's going to keep it, well, that year isn't an issue. But if you have it where your heir, your daughter, wants to sell a house in Bozeman because the house prices here are very high, then yeah, we've got so write a will, leave it in a will. The will will take care of that property. The probate process will take care of it. And maybe we're going to use the will. And probate fees then. The probate fees now have to be, you're going to love this word, reasonable. Okay, it's not a percentage of the estate any longer. So it's looking at hourly. How long does it take the attorney to do the necessary paperwork to get this deed transferred to the next individual? And that's not a lot of paperwork. So we may decide, hey, maybe a will is the best approach. The thing is, visit with your attorney that you have and see what kind of recommendation that he or she would recommend. Marsha Goetting can't recommend anything because she's not an attorney. So I can't give legal advice, but I'm trying to educate you about here are some advantages and disadvantages of both methods. A will work, a Todd will work, but there are consequences to each one of those. Okay? Okay, Kim, do you see any questions that rang a bell with you? Or if you want to ask Kim questions, go ahead, ask her.
I
She'd
think
be
that
glad to answer those.
I think that I can't see all of the questions. I
Oh,
think
okay.
I can see all of them, unfortunately.
Well, okay.
Marsha, I think that's all of the questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Carrie. Well, we just want to extend a special thank you to Tim once again for being our guest with this. Yay! Yay, Tim. And also, it's just been really exciting for me to have a co-partner, a co-host here of having Kim. So stay tuned for us next week. We're going to have another practice session so we know what we're doing. And we look forward to seeing you at Fabulous Fridays. Have a great weekend and keep safe and healthy, okay? Bye-bye.